Hey, it's Cashflow Mike, and today I want to talk about that number that nobody talks about, and it's debt to equity. And today we're going to break it down because it's the most misunderstood ratios in small business. And well, I'm going to tell you, it sounds technical, right? But if you've ever had a client get turned down for a loan or felt stuck without cash, it's probably because of this number, right? So let's simplify it, and I'll show you how to use it and to see the risk before it actually hits. So here's what it really measures. It measures how much money or skin in the game that your client actually has. Do they even believe in their own company? Because it tells you the difference between how much the bank put in and how much your client put in, right? That's what the ratio is. It's a comparison of who's got more skin in the game. And the higher the number, the less money in relationship to the bank your client has, right? The bank has more skin in the game, so there's more risk to who? To the bank. Right? That's why they look at this number. The higher the number, the more risk to the bank. So debt to equity is going to tell you how much the business is relying on the borrowed money from the bank versus their own investment. So it's really simple math. If you look at the balance sheet, you're going to look at total liabilities and then divide it by owner's equity. So what is that? Total liabilities, that's how much I borrowed from the bank. Owner's equity, that's how much I put in. So that equals the debt to equity ratio. So if you're kind of looking at it, right, how much the bank put in versus how much the owner put in, you're going to get a result. And let's just say the result is 1. So if the result is 1, your debt to equity ratio is 1. That means for every dollar you borrowed, you also put in $1. Or for every dollar you put into the business, you borrowed $1. Now, what's kind of cool about this is that if you ever thought about buying a house, right, they use the debt to equity ratio. And usually if you buy a house, they want you to put in 20% of the purchase price, right? If it's a $100,000 house, good luck finding one of those. But if it's a $100,000 house, you had to put in $20,000 and the bank puts in $80,000. Well, 80 becomes the loan. That's the total debt, total liabilities. Divided by your 20, that's your equity. That gives you a 4. Yay, I got a 4. Really what that means is for every dollar you put in, the bank put in $4. So kind of see how that works? Well, the interesting thing about debt to equity is that on a business, they're not going to give you $4. They're going to give you about 2.5, right? So you want that number, if you're looking at debt to equity ratio, you want that number to be at about 2.5 or less if you're looking to get more money, right? If you're looking for a loan. So if you look at your debt to equity ratio before you even walk into the bank and it's 7, 8, 9, well, you got some problems, right? You got some problems and you're probably going to be declined. So don't put yourself through that. Know that this is one of the ratios they're going to look at. So, and again, I'll give you another example. If it's a 3, that means you're borrowing $3 for every dollar you put in. That's what it means. So here's the thing. There's no universal right number, but there is a danger zone, right? And that danger zone for businesses is when it gets over 2.5. I'm not saying you can't get a loan at 3 or 4, but you get closer to being declined the higher this number gets. And here's when it becomes a problem. So let me tell you about a client who had 3 loans on their books, right? They had total liabilities that looked huge. It was just absolutely massive when you looked at the balance sheet. And they hadn't contributed much in equity in years. Now, when I say contributed, you got to remember, profit becomes retained earnings. Retained earnings is in the equity section. So your profit is like you as the owner putting money into your company. And when you take money out to go buy a boat, to go on a vacation, those type of things, well, that reduces your equity. So remember those things. Your contributions and your draws impact this equity number quite a bit. Now, on paper, the business was growing, but the debt to equity ratio was starting to get at 4.5 and going up. And the bank looked at that and said, no way, we're not giving you a loan at 4.5. Remember, I told you it needed to be about 2.5 or less. Well, and that's because this ratio is going to tell the lender how much risk the owner is willing to share, right? If you're not willing to put your own money in, why should we? That's what the bank is saying. So this is a measurement of how much you believe in your company. And even if your client isn't looking for a loan, the ratio is going to tell you how close they are to being leveraged out. And now, if you know me in the Clear Path to Cash, I don't like to use words like leverage and solvency and liquidity. But leverage means, how much do you rely on debt, right? How much do you rely on other people's money? I know that's a cool thing. Yeah, use other people's money. But in business, it's also cool to use your own money. So don't forget that. It's cool to have money yourself, right? Not just always use somebody else's money. So here's how you're going to spot risk early. That debt to equity ratio is going to change gradually. But if you track it, you're going to see warning signs. You're going to see it tick up, right? And the higher it gets, the more risk to a bank or a loan, and the more likely it is you're going to be declined. And if you use it alongside some of the ratios that I teach in the course, in the lesson called How to Deal with Your Banker, you're going to know that they look at your current ratio, your quick ratio. They're going to look at debt to equity ratio. They're looking at these things to see how you manage money and how much money actually moves through the company, right? And you want to use this alongside, when you're making an asset purchase. And it's about next year. Do I need to get a loan next year? Why do I say that? Because the bank is going to want to see a trend. They don't want you to go just drastically change this by putting a bunch of money in one month, get the loan and take the money out. They want to see that you manage pretty consistently over a trend, a longer point in time. So think about loans next year, not tomorrow. Next year when you're thinking about the debt to equity ratio, because if you go in today to get a loan, they're going to look at the last 12 months to see what you do with your debt to equity ratio. And believe it or not, if equity is flat, but debt keeps rising, that's your flag. So think about that. If your equity kind of seems about the same all the time, kind of a flat line, but debt keeps ticking up, that's a red flag that they're going to be looking at. So show your client what that means in real terms, not just math. Help them understand the story behind this ratio, right? Debt to equity isn't just a banker's number. It's a flashlight for you, right? It's going to point to a big problem in your company if you're looking to borrow money, right? It's okay to shine a light on risk. Don't be afraid to look at it, right? It's okay to shine a light on risk because it helps your clients build a stronger and safer business. So I'm Cashflow Mike, and this week, don't just report ratios. Don't just give them a presentation. Help your clients understand what they really mean. And if you need help yourself, check out my program, The Clear Path to Cash. You can learn more about it at cashflowmike.com.